Welcome to Stress-Free IEP. You do not need to do it all alone. With your host, Frances Shefter, Principal of Shefter Law. You can get more details and catch prior episodes at www.shefterlaw.com. The Stress-Free IEP video podcast is also posted on YouTube and LinkedIn, and you can listen to episodes through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Now, here's the host of Stress-Free IEP, Frances Shefter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I cannot believe it's December already. This year has flown by, right? So today's guest is Elyse Dworin, who is the founder and CEO of Elevated Learning Solutions, which is a holistic educational support company in the DMV area. So Elyse, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit, what do you mean by a holistic educational support?
So first, thank you so much for having me. This is great. So when I started this, I very easily could have just been a tutoring company. And to me, that felt so incomplete and just not enough, because when all you do is address gaps and go over homework and teach kids academic concepts, you're not addressing where those holes come from. And you can start by addressing executive functioning skills and study habits and things like that, and foundational concepts and all of those things. But there's so much more to a human being and how well we function and how well we learn and how clearly we can think and focus and all of those things than just academically focused skills. And so we address all of those things. We work on metacognition, which is like a big piece of what I want to talk about today, but it's understanding yourself and understanding how to what helps your body function, what stands in the way of your body from, if your brain being at its best. Are you sleeping well? Are you eating well? And just all of the different things. And I have gone as far as to talk to parents about the idea of getting genetic testing done to look for biomarkers that they may be unaware of, because sometimes there are so many things that come into play that affect how we function that people aren't aware of. And I feel like I just always felt like just focusing on the academic alone wasn't enough. You really have to focus on overall wellness.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And I love that you say that, because that's one of the things I say all the time. My kids don't do homework, and people are like, what do you mean your kids don't do homework? Doesn't it impact their grade? I'm like, yeah, it might, but grades aren't the most important thing. My kids' mental health, their well-being is the most important thing. Now, if my child says, hey, I want to do the homework, okay, let's sit down and do the homework together. But for example, yesterday with my daughter, sitting and doing homework, it took us almost an hour with her having a meltdown and storming off and cursing me out and all of that other stuff. And then her finally calming down and coming back and then being able to do the academics. But it's just like what you're saying, is all of that other stuff is important also.
Yeah.
Because why is this triggering her, right? Why is this math triggering her? What went on? What happened? And how can we address that so it doesn't impact how we're doing math, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And is it just math, or is it other things? And what is going on with her that she's being so significantly impacted by the idea of this task?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I love that. So how does it work? Because obviously, somebody comes to you for a tutor. Most people think tutor, fill the gaps and help with the homework, get my kid getting good grades. What does it look like? How does your program look?
So first first a family comes to me and talks about their specific needs, and then we do a pretty significant intake. Our intakes are 30 minutes. They're free. We tend to give a lot of guidance during our intakes, but we get a really good picture of the child and where they're struggling and what they need. And then I try to match them with an academic coach that has strengths that perfectly balance out what the child needs, what the family needs. And then everything from there is very student guided and student focused. So we are, with one child, we may start with executive functioning assessments, and then we score them together and make goals together. With another child, it might be easing in and getting to know one another to build trust. With another child, we may start off with some mindfulness activities in order to just be able to bring ourselves down and center enough to approach a task. So really, everything is so based on each individual student and what those students need. And it shifts, right? Because students change and students grow, and one day is different than the next. And one week they might be doing really well, and the next week they might really be falling apart. And so it really is based on what they need in that moment. And I mean, we incorporate long-term plans into all of that as well, right? So not everything is right then and there. It might be also, okay, we see we have this test coming up in a week, right? How can we manage? It might be breaking down the test. It might be practicing anxiety strategies for during the test, right? It might be, what can we do the day of or the night before that test to make sure that our bodies are working at its best? We may come into a session and that child has been just struggling that day or that week. And then it might be, okay, let's talk about this. Let's unpack it. Okay, what has been setting you off? And then let's back into those and figure out what's going on, right? So I would say the central piece of everything we do, whether we're focusing on academics or executive functioning or social emotional, the central piece is metacognition, which is what I had brought up before. It's really just knowing yourself, right? Because the key to independence, which is our goal as educators and as supports for these individuals, is for them to be able to understand, this works for me, this doesn't work for me. This kind of situation is going to be uncomfortable for me. So how can I either prepare for that situation or prepare to manage that situation in a way that is going to help me be successful?
Right, which is so important because, I what automatically pops into my head is in the IEP world of available for learning, and how if a child had a rough day all day, like when my daughter yesterday when her explosion, I didn't engage. I let her storm off and do her thing. And I sat there, and when she was ready to come back, she was ready to come back. But at that point in time, if I had yelled at her and like, you need to sit down and do this, and you need to sit down, she wouldn't have been able to do it because her brain was somewhere else. Something else was triggering her. Something else was happening. She was not available for me to help teach her. She needed to get her space into her head where she was so that she could then be open to me explaining it. Now, mind you, this was math. And obviously, me being older, we learned math a very different way. Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know how to explain how I did it. I just did it. And then so I had to like reverse engineer to teach her. And like, this is how mommy does it. She's like, well, that's not how we learned. I'm like, okay, but this is another way.
But you're going to get that conversation anyway, because math is like one of my loves. And my 9-year-old and my almost 12-year-old will give me the exact same thing, but you weren't in the classroom. Yes, but I understand exactly what's happening in this on this paper, and I can see the sample on the previous page, and this is what has to happen. Nope, that's not what my teacher said. And sometimes it's just a matter of me saying, okay, so either I can help you in the way that I understand, or
Right.
you can get help from your teacher tomorrow. Because I think peace in the home is an understated thing.
And that's exactly why I don't do homework. I don't force the homework issue, because like for me, my kids are in school 6 hours, 7 hours a day. They have after school stuff going on. They have
Yeah.
therapy, they have physical therapy, like they have Hebrew school. And when do they get to be a kid and get their downtime? And
Mhm.
they're like, my older daughter is very intuitive and knowing when she needs that. And so she'll say, like, Mom, I haven't had enough me time. I need some me time. So
Yeah.
for me, her mental health, her knowing she needs me time is
That's
more
great.
important than her doing her homework and getting straight A's,
Yeah.
And that it sounds
Yeah.
like that's what you guys do as a tutor, is that you look at that, where is the child in this space right now
Yes.
to help them, because again, being available for learning is a huge part of it.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think giving them a lot of autonomy within those sessions helps them to build that understanding. I mean, I have one particular student who, she's a college student, but she has so much on her plate, too much on her plate. And, we've had conversations. Okay, so part of adulting, right, is understanding how much you can take on, and then balancing all of those responsibilities, but then also sitting down with her and saying, okay, where do you want my support? What do you want to get out of this? How can I help you? Right? And so some kids need different levels of that, right? So it might be, here are the things I'm thinking that we could do today. Where would you like to begin? It could be, okay, I see that you are struggling with this assignment. Why don't you tell me what you understand, what you don't understand? And I think, helping kids flesh out what they need for themselves, and helping them flesh out, okay, I can't deal with this right now, but I know it's important and I want to come back to it. But right now, in this moment, I need to do something else because this is going to make me feel more centered, right? And helping them just look through all that and make those decisions, and while still giving them the guidance, right? And, you can put that assignment off, but at the same time, you can't put it off forever. So let's make a plan of when you're going to come back, and then we're going to put it aside, right? So help giving them that scaffolding,
Right.
but then also giving them the autonomy to make those calls, right? And then coming back next time you see them and saying, okay, so what worked? What didn't work? What were you able to follow? What weren't you able to follow? And how, based on the stuff you couldn't follow, why? What about it made it hard to follow? What about it made it overwhelming? What about it made it something that you just couldn't sit down and do? And let's address that.
Right. Which is what the kids need to learn, because we can sit there and plan for them as much as they want. But then when they go to college or, out in the workforce or trade school or whatever they do after high school, who's going to help them do that? They don't know how to.
Yes.
With everything, it's knowing yourself, like knowing that, what, this doesn't work for me. I understand that like 95% of the world does it that way, but that's not how it works for me. And I need to do it this way. And it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
And I will say, as a professional, I know all of this stuff. As a mom, it is so much harder because when my kids are putting their foot down and they're giving me their boundaries, I so badly want to be like, but no, but you have to do this, or, but I can see, like, if you make this choice, this is going to be the outcome, and that is not the outcome you want. it's so much harder for me to just sit back and just let them play out, let things play out so they can learn the outcome, because I'm their mom and the investment level is different.
100%.
So I have these conversations with parents, our clients, all the time, right? Because like I can teach you how to do what I'm doing. And we work with parents all the time to help them understand how to support their kids and help them guide their kids. But I always recognize like, this is going to be harder for you than it is for me, because you're the parent.
Yeah. And that's, it's so funny you say that, because it's something that I go through all the time as a parent. My daughter like totally cussed me out last night. And there would be a time that I would have, you don't talk to me like that. And you know what I mean? And would have met her there rather than me just staying calm. Like, I get that you're mad. When you're ready, I'm here, and that was like huge on my part of that mind shift, because again, I was brought up in the era, you don't talk to your parents like that. Or you're going to bed without dinner, you're getting backhanded, like something of that. But to me, like, you know what? She's expressing it. She's not addressing me. She's getting out her anger. And that's okay. Yes, we need to learn.
Don't you feel like such a superhero when you're able to actually do it too?
Like, yes, yeah, exactly. Like I did it. I might, call up a friend and be like, oh my God, my child did this, this, and this, but I was able to stay calm in that moment,
And it's so hard. It's so hard because your natural fight or flight wants to kick in too.
Yep.
So like it's so difficult, but when you can keep calm in the face of being verbally attacked by one of your children, you are just the most. I just feel like I'm winning at parenting in those moments.
Right, exactly. Well, that's, like me being a former educator with the whole homework thing, it's like in my head, it was a challenge for me to get to this point, because it's like, well, but what happens when, they have to do stuff at middle school or high school or when they're adults? I'm like, you know what? At that point, then we'll readjust. But like right now for me, I need my kids to be able to be well-rounded and adjusted and mentally healthy, because like, again, I don't care about the straight A's, especially in elementary school, like I care about the learning, and the academics I know will come later.
And you have to meet them where they are.
Right.
Right. I think if you're so focused on 10 years from now, then you can't meet them where they are in that moment. And you miss out on the wonders of those moments, because I feel like even the difficult moments, right? If I'm so focused on, oh my God, if my child makes this choice, they're never going to be able to do this down the line, or they're going to end up being, never going to learn this. But like in that moment, so if you're so focused on then, you're not focused on like, well, right now, my child is learning how to exhibit independence emotionally. They are recognizing their own boundaries. They are verbalizing them and communicating them. Even though I see a negative outcome here, they are creating a circumstance, an opportunity for themselves to learn that negative outcome. My dad used to tell me I was from the school of hard knocks, because and no matter what my parents told me, I did whatever. Like I was a difficult kid in that sense. Like you could tell me anything you want until I experienced that on my own. It was not reality. And so I would have to make my bad choices and experience the bad outcomes. And then I would learn most of the time.
Yeah, but it's the only way to do it. Like I remember one of the things that kill me, and I'm sure your kids do it also, is the don't do that because X might happen. And then they do that anyway. And see, X didn't happen. It's like, okay, so it didn't happen this time. But the reality is, like the trampoline thing, the reality is more people are injured on trampolines than not injured on trampolines. So yes, you can do it 100 times, but that 101 time could be really bad.
That is the conversation I have with my daughter on a regular basis when she tries to climb up the railing.
Yeah, exactly.
All the time. Look, Mom, I didn't fall. Great, but you're like 15 feet off the ground. So what if you do fall?
Right, exactly. And it's like, and it's hard as a parent to be like, let them, we need to let them fall sometimes, because like you said, some kids that's what they need. They need to learn it that way, because
Yeah.
if not, to them, it's not. And for me, like, I think back to what we're also teaching them of not being afraid of falling.
Yeah.
I played a game we had a mom's brunch on Sunday, and one of the questions was, what could you do, or what would you do if you weren't afraid of failing?
A lot.
Right?
Yeah.
Pretty powerful. It was
Yeah.
kind of like all of us, like, like all of us, like, wow, because it's the truth.
Yeah.
And it's giving our kids that opportunity to learn, I don't have to be afraid of failing. It's okay to fail.
Yeah.
It's
It
okay
also
to make a
creates
mistake.
opportunities for problem solving.
Right.
Right. I mean, and sometimes in fabulous ways, sometimes in ways where we're just like, that is not what I meant.
Right. Exactly.
My oldest, it's like a year ago, my oldest decided he wanted to go down the stairs in a laundry basket. And he asked my husband, "Do you think this is a good idea?" And he said, "No, I don't. It doesn't seem safe to me. I wouldn't do it." So he goes, "Okay." And he went down the stairs in a laundry basket and he chipped a tooth.
Oh.
So, and to this day, his tooth is sensitive. It is uncomfortable. Last weekend, so this is like a year ago now. Last weekend, he says to me, "Mom, do you think it's a good idea if I do it again?" And I said, "Well, what happened last time?" He said, "Yeah, that's right." So we went and he got a helmet. I was like, I don't know that that's really the
Love them.
No, I stopped him because we talked about holes in the wall and whatnot, but like, kids, he problem solved.
Yeah.
Right. He saw the outcome, the negative outcome that he didn't like. And so he problem solved. But that's what kids can, if they are put in the situation, they can problem solve. But if we are constantly solving their problems for them and bubble wrapping them and shielding them from these negative outcomes, they lose that opportunity.
Right. And they're never going to learn how to.
Right.
That's my biggest challenge now, is when the kids are fighting. My girls, they're 3 years apart, and they're like the best, but they're like, and like doing things to annoy each other. And it's hard for me to not intervene, because it just gets on my nerves, and it's like one's being mean to the other and the other, and I want to protect them from each other. But it's like, I need to take that step back, because that's how kids learn how to interact with other people in their safe space, because they know their sibling is going to always love them.
Yeah.
Most of the time, but in that thing. And it's just, parenting is so hard with that stuff of like, taking that step back.
I find that I have the same issue. If one child is going after the other and the other is trying their hardest to walk away, I will intervene. Right. If they're going after each other, I leave the room, because I try. I'm like, this is not going to go in a good place. Like, you need to stop. You need to leave each other alone. They ignore me, and I'm like, okay, you will work it out. And I leave the room, because otherwise it gets my blood boiling. And in the end, someone always gets more upset than the other, and then it ends.
Yeah.
Not really in the way that I would prefer it ended, but it ends, right? And they learn little by little. I mean, siblings fight, and it's horrible, and I hate it. But
it reminds me of an incident. So I took my 12-year-old nephew with my 2 girls to visit my mom in Florida. And I don't remember where we were. My mom wasn't with us, but the girls were in the back seat, and they were arguing. Mm-hmm. And my nephew turns around and says something, like tries to intervene or something. So the 2 of them then turn around, join together, and go against him. And it was so funny, because I just looked at him. I'm like, "You set that up." He's like, "Yeah, fair," but like, it's the reality. But they stopped fighting. But it was just so funny how they're like, "Wait a minute, we can talk to each other like that, but you can't jump in."
Right. And they do, and they will come to the defense of each other, and sometimes, and their siblings are like this. It's like a microcosm of social interaction all in one space. And I think that's they're in each other's faces all the time. It's just they live together. People live together and they drive each other nuts. I think that's part of living together.
Right. And we choose to. The siblings don't get that choice. They're thrown together, right?
I know. I wanted to bring up something because I saw the face you made earlier when I mentioned genetic testing.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that's not something you commonly hear people say.
No, it's not, it's not. I mean, I've had genetic testing done for like different reasons and stuff, but it's not something people like. What genetic testing, I guess that's the questions. Like, what markers are there that would help in the tutoring sense?
So the one that I'm the most familiar with, and it's because I ended up down this rabbit hole because I tested positive for it, is the MTHFR gene mutation. So the MTHFR gene, what it does is it, in very layman's terms, because I am not a scientist or a doctor, is it helps your body process protein. I think it's proteins into amino acids, and then which allows your body to process and release toxins. Right. Okay. That's a very, very like simplistic explanation. I may have swapped the amino acids and the proteins. I'm not sure, but basically it allows your body to release toxins. And what was happening with me, I was getting sick I had all of these different unrelated health issues. And I switched doctors and I asked my new doctor to run a panel of just everything. I said, I want you to look for heavy metal toxicities, vitamins and minerals, anything that could be built up that my body isn't processing the way it should. And it turned out my mercury was through the charts, like off the charts, literally in toxic levels. My lead was high. My vitamin B12 was high, like super, super high. And my brother, who is an acupuncturist and an herbalist, took a look at my test and he said, I want you to get tested for this gene mutation. And so I asked my doctor and they ran a test. It's very simple. You could do it through a blood test. You can buy the test on Amazon. They're like a cheek swab, very simple. Yeah. And I tested positive for it. And so basically what was happening was my body was not, you eat things, you put things on your skin. Like my body wasn't processing all of these different things that I was consuming. And so between the mercury that shows up in fish, which I really like to eat, and in the stuff that helps bugs stay away from
pesticides.
I'm like, I had the pee and there was also coming out. And in pesticides, my body wasn't filtering it. And heavy metals, they settle in the brain. And so my anxiety was through the roof. My ADD, which I was diagnosed with ADD when I was, I think, 8, but it was getting worse. I was having all these other health issues. And so I ran a few cycles of a detox. I changed my multivitamin to one that had a methylated vitamin B12, which is basically a bioavailable version of B12, because folic acid, which is what you take when you're pregnant, is what your body can't process when you have the MTHFR gene mutation. And that's because the B12 is what you need in order to work this process of detox. But it needs to be the natural B12. And so I had 2 children, one after another. I nursed each one for a long time, and I was on prenatal vitamins for a very long time. And so my body had B12 just stockpiling. And so all of these health issues I was having was a result of all of these things that my body could not get rid of. And once I switched,
totally makes sense.
Yeah. And once I switched my vitamin and I worked through these detoxes, things got so much better. And so I wrote an article on it. It's on my website. I've been telling parents, when parents come to me during an intake even, and they tell me, we've tried all these things, the meds aren't working. we've tried this, nothing seems to be helping. I say, I suggest they go get tested. And it doesn't mean
I'm like, wait, where am I going to get my kids tested now?
You can go.
Yeah.
Some doctors can run the panel. I often send families to an apothecary because they have nurses that are on staff that will run the test. But you can also get the test on Amazon, really cheap. And it's not. Now there are two different mutation types. One's more severe than the other, and the more severe version, you really do need a doctor to kind of help you manage. But there are simple changes in diet that help. And I will say, I mean, we have a client who has an ASD diagnosis, and things over the course of a year just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, to the point where he was not leaving his room, would not change, would not shower, would not go to school. And I suggested that he get tested. And as soon as they started treating him, within, I think it was a month, he cleaned his room, requested to go back to school, asked for new clothes.
Wow.
It was so much that had built up that he just couldn't function. So
it makes sense. It really does.
Yeah. So these toxins that build up can mimic ADHD, ASD, right? And I'm not saying that they automatically cause ADHD or ASD, but
it intensifies.
It can intensify, or it can create the symptoms of those things where there previously was none.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, which is why to me, like the connection between the gut and the brain and the body and the brain and every stimuli, every action, all of the movement or lack of movement, our diet, our sleep, everything comes into play when it comes to how we're feeling and how we're functioning, which is why I don't feel like it makes sense to address just academics, because then you're putting a Band-Aid on a crack in a dam.
Right. You're not addressing the source. Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. It's so, and I think back to like just so many times about people saying, we eat, especially in the States, we eat way too much processed foods with all the chemicals and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And you don't even know half of what's in our foods, that are banned from other countries.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's going to impact your body different. My mom introduced us, and I think it was my sister. I don't remember, but my mom introduced me to an app, Yucca, Yuka, that you scan foods, and
I know that app. Yes.
Yes, it tells you the rating and what's in it, and is it the additives good or the bad? And you would be amazed at how many organic things or healthy things have additives in it,
because chemicals don't make something non-organic.
Right.
So organic just means that the natural components are not, messed with, or they're not, right? But you can add, organic cookies can be loaded with sugar, which in and of itself causes issues.
Right.
Right. So that's, I look up food all the time. I'm very careful that I read ingredients, even with my makeup, with my skincare, with my hair products. I use the EWG website to look up things, to see how dangerous they are. If there are too many ingredients that I can't pronounce, I won't eat it. I won't use it, because that, and with the gene mutation too, like I can't really have processed foods. And although I've never had my kids tested, the chances of one of them or both of them having this mutation, because I have it, is really high. So I try to only bring things into the house that I know are good. Now, does that stop them from eating junk outside the house? No. My oldest comes home from school and his pockets are like overflowing with candy wrappers. I can't control everything that they put in their body, but I can at least balance it out by what I bring in the house.
Right. No, and that makes sense because like everything in moderation. And I'll tell you, since I started using the app, some foods have surprised me. Like I used to get on my husband because he would buy the Kirkland lasagna and keep them in the freezer for like when he didn't feel like cooking because he does dinner most nights. But I scanned it and it came out good. I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, like I know Kirkland is usually good, but that surprised me because it was a prepared
Kirkland
lasagna.
can be a mix.
Yes.
Kirkland can be a mix. In general, I try to now. My husband also doesn't love cooking, and so when he's in charge of meals, we will tend to go in the easier route. I am very hesitant when it comes to non-organic dairy and meat because of the hormones and
Yep.
the chemicals that they do give, like the medicine and all of that stuff that they give the animals. That being said, like we will eat non-organic dairy and meat. Sometimes from time to time, and definitely when you go to a restaurant, you're always looking for an organic restaurant. But yeah, I don't know. Does that come up on the Yuka app? Whether it's organic or where it's from, or
I
is it
I
just
don't
like a
remember.
health balance?
No, I mean, it comes up with everything. So I would assume that because the additives, and it says whether it's good at, not that it's good additives, but additives that have no impact or
Right.
moderate impact or high impact. But, some foods surprised me.
Yeah.
But it makes a difference. It just makes sense because
Yeah.
like the red dye 40, I think it was, that
Yes.
everybody says impacts ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
behavior, emotions, and all that other stuff. It's like, why is this stuff allowed in our food? Right? And why is it needed?
So much that we have in our food here that is
Yeah.
illegal in other countries. It's interesting. I was watching, I think it was a video on Instagram, and there was someone in a Swedish shop, and he was showing the different candy shelves, and there is a whole shelf of just American candy, and they have warning labels. This food contains this ingredient, which is known to increase hyperactivity and decrease focus in children. Like the fact that
Yeah.
American food has to be given warning labels in other countries says a lot.
That's scary. Yeah, that is scary. Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, like, and I say all the time, like, back with the whole breastfeeding or formula, fed is best. That goes on as long as your kids are like the rest of your life. You know what I mean? Like when you're a parent and your kids, fed is best. If all you can manage to do is do drive-through
Absolutely.
McDonald's, do drive-through McDonald's.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Be aware of it, and maybe, okay, well, so maybe not McDonald's, maybe someplace else is a little bit better or whatever it is. And, but like, yeah, it makes a sense. Like I say all the time, we prefer organic in the house, but if it means organic or no fruit, like if it means non-organic or no fruit, we're going to take the non-organic fruit.
Oh, exactly. And it's no different. Like we were talking about our husbands cooking and needing the meal to be easy, right? That mental health piece, right? I could force my husband to cook meals instead of making something easy, but then at what expense? Right. So sometimes all of it has to come into play, right? Your mental health, general nutrition, like is your child eating? I have a friend who was telling me the other day that her child is such a picky eater that sometimes she'll just let him have ice cream because he hasn't eaten and he won't won't eat anything else. And then he just needs calories.
Yeah.
Right. And
my daughter, yeah. And I would say my younger daughter, when she starts getting really, really whiny and complaining, and like, I know she needs to eat something. My mom picked up on it also. So it's like, here, have a piece of orange, have this granola bar.
My daughter's the same.
Within 5 minutes, she's like, oh, okay, back to normal again.
Yes. My daughter's the exact same way. And I think she's 9 and now she's just getting to the point where she can identify that she's hungry, where before it was like, my body hurts, I don't feel well. And that could mean she was hungry, she was tired, she was sad, she actually was hurt or not like sick. And so, it took her until 9, which every kid's different. Some kids, can figure that out at 5. Some kids don't figure that out until 14. But she can identify now, okay, I don't feel well. And with a prompt, she can say, yes, I think I'm hungry.
Right. Which is good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we went so I'm laughing. But it's important, but this is a good conversation. Like, it's important, like, that we know and we realize. And that's where you come in different, of looking at the holistic approach, looking at bringing it back to, let's address what might be causing some of this, and if we do this genetic testing, we find out where things are coming from and see, okay, well, maybe it's not that, maybe it is, and tweak some things. It just makes life easier for all of us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And makes our kids more aware of themselves and their needs and how to address it. Right. And, again, like, oh, okay, so I have this X, so I need to remember to do Y, because, even though my friends don't have to do it, I have to, because that's what I need.
Yes. Oh my God. I have that conversation with my son all the time. But my friends this, but my friends that. And my answer is always, but I'm not raising them. I'm raising you.
Exactly.
And you clearly this causes this issue for you. Therefore, we are currently dealing with the debate on screens and video games.
Oh, yes. And always, right?
Yeah. And with my daughter, well, I would say with both of my kids, if they're on screens too long, they get moody. But with my son, he can turn a TV off, no problem. If he is playing video games and you ask him to pause the game, or you try to talk to him without asking him to pause the game, God forbid, World War III.
Wow.
And we actually, we went through a period, I would say a month, where things were just so rocky and so emotional in this house. He was yelling at everyone. He was angry all the time. And I actually reached out to his doctor about adjusting his medication, because I was like, I don't think it's working anymore. He's growing. And he actually, he did something where he got in trouble. And as a punishment, he lost screens for a week. And all of a sudden I had my child back. Yeah. And he was calm, and we were spending time with him, and he was having conversations with us. And my husband and I just kind of looked at each other and we were like, okay, so maybe the screens are having more of an issue than we initially thought.
Yep. Yeah. Interesting. And that's how you figure it out. And it's, we put restrictions back on. We go back and forth, but like, we put restrictions back on time, and they have a total meltdown. I don't know what else to do. I'm so bored. There's nothing else to do.
Right.
But okay, that's fine. But you're not getting your tablet back. Within 20 minutes, they find something else to do.
Right. Always.
Right?
And I would say that the longer they've been on, it's no different. I would say it's no different than any drug. The longer they've been on, right? You give them 2 days of nonstop screens, the longer it takes them to detox.
Yep.
Their brain actually has to recalibrate. And they eventually get there, but it begins with, I'm bored, there's nothing to do.
Exactly. I don't want to do any of that.
Right. No, because nothing is stimulating enough.
Right.
And with my son, I'm trying to help him understand this is why, right? With the screens, it's stimulation, and all of a sudden we stop, and your brain is saying, oh my God, what just happened? Where did all the stimulation go? And so nothing measures up.
Right.
Right. And so it's that sudden, freak out. Yeah. And he's starting, I think, to understand and see that correlation. And we do discuss it. But when he's off screens for a significant amount of time, he's like a completely different kid. Wow. He's creative. He writes. We play board games. He problem solves. And he's a super bright kid. And when he's playing video games all the time, even for an hour a day, for him, he gets off and then he's just he doesn't want to socialize. Everything is boring. And so we try, I use a lot of the same tricks with my kids that I use with my students, where if I'm working with a student and they're having trouble focusing, we will put on some music in the background. There's some really great alpha wave there. If you go to Spotify and you look up focus mixes, or specifically ADHD or anxiety focus, there's anxiety calming ones. So there's alpha waves, beta waves, and gamma waves. And they each have a little bit of a different effect on the brain. And some of them are more calming, some of them are more energizing. And you can put in that keyword in Spotify. Sometimes I will specifically pull up focus sound waves with a beat, right? Because like I use it for myself too. And that is enough to provide the brain stimulation and calm the body.
Wow.
You just have to find the right one for that moment.
And what works, which makes sense, because when I was a runner, there was the running ones that would help you to pace because of the way it played, Wow.
Oh yeah. The music has such a significant impact on the brain, right? Think about it. Sometimes when you're sad, there are certain songs you want to listen to, or you're angry. There are certain songs that either help you get revved up and be in your anger, be in your feelings for a while to get it out. And then there are certain songs that can help you calm down, right? Mm-hmm. And so I try to utilize that with my clients and with my own kids to help them rebalance, recalibrate as needed.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Wow, I just realized how late it got. We were just yapping, which I love. Yeah. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, they're like, hey, I like this idea. I like the holistic approach. And what's the best way to engage with you?
I would say the ideal way would be to fill out an interest form. So if you go to my website, www.elevatedlearningsolutionsllc.com, and there is a link at the top for an inquiry form, and you can schedule a meeting with either me or my assistant director of academic support, Deb. And we also offer IEP and 504 advocacy and psychoeducational testing, and so there's a separate link for that as well. But I would say that's probably the easiest way if you're looking for our services. Mm-hmm. If you just have a question, you can always reach out to me through Facebook. I'm on there pretty often. You could message me through Facebook or put something on my page.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. And I know we'll have all those links when we get the full publishing. But thank you so much. This has been so awesome. I love it. Talking to other moms that get it,
It's nice. Yeah, it's always nice to know that someone else is experiencing what you're experiencing, for sure.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So thank you so much for being on the
time. It's been great talking to you, always.
You've been listening to Stress-Free IEP with your host, Frances Shefter. Remember, you do not need to do it all alone. You can reach Frances through shefterlaw.com, where prior episodes are also posted. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing the show with others through YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more.